Is there anything different to, well, it's a different situation, but when people are just migrating from one hosting provider to another, so we definitely see that too. They're staying on MemberMouse, but
Right.
they're changing.
That's a little bit more straightforward, because as far as MemberMouse is concerned, like MemberMouse in terms of how it functions and runs, it's a very closed system. It requires the database, it requires the plugin, and it requires WordPress. So if you're migrating, as long as all those pieces move over intact, then there shouldn't be any problems. Now, the other critical component there is to make sure that your URL stays the same, because MemberMouse licensing is based on the URL. So if you're changing URLs, then the timing of it becomes a little bit more, you need to be a little bit more careful, because there is communication happening between your MemberMouse site and the MemberMouse central server, which manages recurring billing for card on file payment services, such as Stripe, Braintree, Authorized.net CIM. So there is communication happening between your site and the central server. So if you're going to move sites, it's, you need to make sure the central server knows about it. Otherwise, it will keep communicating with the old site, and then, there will be issues in billing. So the way to do that is just to make sure the URL that you have registered with MemberMouse through, when you log into membermouse.com, you have the place where you put your URL in. Just make sure that that your live site with the database that was being populated while MemberMouse was running is present at that URL and not somewhere else. So also, we're dealing with real-time transactional system here. You're dealing with orders, right? So depending on how much traffic your site gets, timing becomes more important. Best practice, generally speaking, right before you're going to be moving your site, you want to just shut everything down on your old site. Put it into maintenance mode. There are WordPress plugins that will put your site into maintenance mode, and this will keep new orders and new signups from happening while you're in the process of moving the database. Because if you don't turn it off, you may make a copy of the database to do the migration, but then new orders come in and now your data sets are not in sync. And the other thing is, once you've moved it to the new server, if you're keeping the same URL, which likely you will, you'll need to give it time for the DNS to propagate, right? Because server A, your old server, the DNS was set to the IP address of that server. So when you type in the URL of your site, the DNS would resolve to the IP address of the old server. So what you were going to do when you're migrating is you're going to point the DNS to resolve to the IP address of the new server. That takes some time. It doesn't take as long as it used to, but you want to make sure that people visiting your site, once you've migrated it, are going to the new server and not the old one. So, but what I've described in terms of a migration from one server to another, all of those pieces, that's not unique to migrating a MemberMouse site. That's basically what you would do for migrating any site from one server to another. So the only thing that's unique about the MemberMouse situation in terms of migrating from one server to another is that you need to be conscious and aware of the fact that the URL that you've typed into membermouse.com is when it comes time to rebuild the people who are MemberMouse is billing for on your behalf. I didn't say that exactly correct. MemberMouse isn't billing anybody on your behalf, but technically speaking, we're just pinging your site to let your site know to bill those people, right? So we just maintain the schedule of timing when to let your site know to bill people. Anyway, so you just want to make sure that that URL is correctly registered in membermouse.com. Likely when you're migrating a site, that URL will stay the same. But if it is changing, you need to make sure to let MemberMouse know that it's changing so that our rebill scheduler is pinging the correct URL to let it know to rebill. So that's
Okay.
so
Yeah,
that's
that's very helpful. Thanks. Because sometimes when you read it, you know, it's just a different experience than when you hear someone
yeah.
discussing it. You know, when you read it, it's like very, at least
Yeah,
from my perspective, overwhelming. I mean, it is
there's a
anyway,
lot
but
of
you know,
steps.
there's a lot of steps. Yeah. So,
Yeah. But like I said, I mean, it's there's nothing really unique about the MemberMouse migration process from one site to another. That's just the process that you would have to go through if you were migrating from any server to another. But there are special considerations for transactional systems and the real-time aspect of transactional systems, like MemberMouse. So, yeah.